You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I talk to people all the time about, well, I'm having trouble finishing the script, or I haven't started writing yet, or they foresee a long, arduous process. And of course, it is to a certain extent. But if you think about it, sit down at your computer, take an hour every morning, and write 5 pages. In 3 weeks, you'll have a full feature. You'll have a feature script. You just have to do it. Just don't forget about the blank page. Just start writing. If it sucks, writing is rewriting. You're going to go back anyway. Any decent script should be written probably about 30 or 40 times.
Hey everyone, thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. This is episode 102. Before I get into this week's episode, I just want to mention that I was Podbean's Podcast of the Week. So hello to all of my new subscribers, all 200 of you. Thank you very much. I was going to thank you all individually, but there's way too many names to go through. So I just want to say thank you for subscribing via Podbean. And everyone, as always, you can subscribe either through iTunes or Podbean. And there's a ton of players for the Android app. You can actually get this right into a feed. So I've also uploaded a bonus episode of the podcast. It's from a blab that I did with John Trigonis and Michael Doherty, where they gave feedback to 2 IndieGoGo campaigns that are actually currently crowdfunding right now. I will link to that in the show notes. So if you're planning on launching a crowdfunding campaign, I would highly recommend that you listen to this particular bonus episode. I was also reading an interview on No Film School by Ryan Koo, where he interviews Ira Glass. And if you don't know who Ira is, he's an American public radio personality and the host and producer of the television show and radio show This American Life. During the interview, he states, "Why make a movie? It takes a year. It's such a horrible process, and the chances of anyone seeing it, of it being any good, are almost nothing. It's crazy. It's so wrong-headed." Does he have a point? Well, in my opinion, he does and he doesn't. I understand the frustration of actually making a movie. Believe me, I've been down that path many times before, as I've worked in all different roles of making a movie. The process of making a movie has actually slightly changed with the past few years because of the internet. You can crowdfund and you can release a movie, your movie, through your own website online. And, you can just keep doing that process. Jason Brubaker actually has a whole course dedicated to how to do that. And, shooting on digital has also lowered costs. But, I understand that, everything can be frustrating in the film business. Things, happen, and then people join projects, people leave projects. Movies get delayed for whatever reason, but could the movie industry go through another shift? So I want to hear your predictions. In the next couple of years, what are some of the predictions you see the movie industry going through, whether it's indie films or whether it's the big budget blockbusters like the Superman versus Batman, which is actually already out by the time you're hearing this. I'm actually recording this on a Thursday, by the way. So I want to hear your predictions. You could tell me in the show notes at davebullis.com or just tweet me. It's at Dave_Bullis. But on this week's episode, I'm sitting down with William Dickerson, and we're chatting filmmaking, finding funding for your projects, writing movies, all that good stuff. So here it is, episode 102 of the Dave Bullis Podcast.
You're listening to the Dave Bullis Podcast.
Hey everyone, thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. Joining me today is William Dickerson. William is the writer-director of DETOUR, The Mirror, Don't Look Back, and the author of the book DETOUR, Hollywood. William, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Happy to be here, Dave.
So William, I wanted to ask you, how did you get started in the film industry?
Well, it's been a long, long road. I mean, like many filmmakers, I fell in love with it as a kid. I tell this story that when I was in 6th grade, I think I think it was less about genius and more about laziness. I wanted to, I had to do a book report on 10 Little Indians for my English class. And I asked my teacher, hey, could I do a movie adaptation instead? And I got my grandfather's camcorder and I shot a movie with a bunch of my friends. And ever since that point, I've been hooked.
That's all. It always starts young, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
So, but from there, I always ask this question too, is, did you, obviously you took that passion with you from, as you grew up, and from middle school to high school. So the question I want to know is, did you go to film school?
I did, yeah. In undergrad, I went to a small liberal arts college called Holy Cross. They didn't have that much in the way of film, but I was able to construct my own kind of film concentration, and I graduated with a thesis. Then I spent about 2 years in New York working and cobbling together enough money to make a couple of short films that, got into festivals, did pretty well. And that led me to apply to the American Film Institute out in Los Angeles. I got accepted and moved out here in LA in 2004. So I've been here ever since.
I always ask, if somebody went to film school, because usually you hear two different, very different viewpoints from it.
Yeah.
One says, hey, it was great, and this is what I learned, it allowed me to be creative, et cetera, et cetera. And the other one says, I don't know what I paid for.
Yeah, sure.
And I just
Sure.
So William, I have to ask you, which side do you fall on?
Well, I loved my film school experience. I can't, speak more highly of AFI. I mean, it was 150% filmmaking all the time. And, there's the Paul Thomas Anderson school of things where he went to NYU for a semester, dropped out, and spent his money making movies. And that's one approach. The other is, you learn your craft, you make the mistakes in a safe environment, you learn, and then you end up graduating with a network of people who you're going to grow in the industry with. And, that's how it worked out for me. On DETOUR, my producers I went to AFI with, my cinematographer I went to AFI with, my first assistant director I went to AFI with, and it's this growing network that, hey, do you need a gig? What are you working on? I can get you on this, or if I can get you on something, I can. So, it's a very tough business, but if you have a core group of great people who are on board with, you as an artist, I mean, that really helps. And that's probably the biggest benefit of going to film school.
So you mentioned the movie DETOUR. Now, you wrote and directed DETOUR, correct?
Yes.
So, if you could you take us through, actually making, DETOUR? Because, you said you had some of the producers you met at AFI, help you with that.
Yeah.
So, if you could just take us through that whole process of, how did you actually, what was the impetus to actually write the script? And, how did you actually, find funding for a movie?
Yeah, well, that was an incredible journey. Well, when I graduated, I had a lot of steam after graduation, and then the writer's strike happened, and everything kind of went nowhere for a while. And my writing partner, Dwight Moody, and I were thinking about, well, what could we write that we can make manageably, that we can just do outside of Hollywood? And we came up with this idea of what was essentially One Man in One Location, about a man being buried alive in his car during a mudslide. Then we wrote the script, and, literally to do for $10,000 with a junker we bought off Craigslist and a couple of wheelbarrows full of dirt. And what happened was people liked the script, and suddenly we had over $1 million, and we had this star attached and that person attached, and we had all this funding, and we went on this kind of 3-year adventure of having a lot of funding and having stars, then that falling through, and then we went down another path, and that we thought was quite fruitful, and then that fell through. And so we were kind of lured by the temptress that is Hollywood for about 3 years, until finally I was like, well, I wrote this thing to make for nothing. Let's just do it. And once I decided that and set a date, everything kind of came together. I mean, we made the movie for not $1 million, but not $10,000. And we were able to, through the investment of 4 or 5 people, bring it together, get just enough resources to make it, and pulled a lot of favors. And we got it in the can. And around the summer of 2010, we finished the shooting. We had a cut by the following Thanksgiving, and then we ran out of money. So we had everything, and then all of a sudden we have a great cut, but we don't have color correction. We don't have, post sound, all the bells and whistles that you need to have a proper film. But the good thing was we had a locked picture. And once we had that, I took that around to producers. And a producer by the name of Bill Todman at Level One Entertainment saw it, and he loved it. And this, I swear to you, this is the best meeting I ever had. I'm in the conference room. We're watching the film. It's myself, my producers, and Bill and his company people. And he's moaning and groaning throughout the screening. I'm like, oh man, he hates it. This is terrible. And by the end of it, he's like, oh, you really made me squirm. I was like, oh, okay, cool. He's like, how much? And he said, how much to buy the film? Name a number. I'm like, okay. And we named our number, and he bought it in the room, which is pretty amazing.
That's absolutely amazing. There's a couple questions I have, obviously for you about that story. One is, you mentioned it came from, you started to make this for 10,000. That was your original goal.
Yes.
And then suddenly, you were able to get, funding, but that fell through. So my question for that is, did you sort of send the script out to anybody in particular, or did the script sort of take a life of its own, if you know what I mean?
It kind of,
meaning like,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to clarify what I said,
sure.
but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it kind of went off and started its own life. I mean, I had a producer by the name of Carrie LeGrand, who was an AFI person, and through her contacts, she's like, "Yo, I have this company who might be interested in helping fund it. Would you allow me to take it there?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, do it." And then they read it and they loved it, and that's how we got our first set of funding. So there was always a conduit to money, but through back channels and a lot of deals. So, I mean, it's like this business, it's very much like controlling chaos most of the time. But the more people and you grow up with in the film business, the more willing people are, to help you get to that point of getting something made.
Yeah, very true. I've noticed that the filmmakers who live in the small towns tend to have a leg up because they have, it's a small town, people know each other.
Yeah.
And they're willing to help out more than, let's say, New York, where it's like, hey, get the hell out of here. I don't want you filming here. I've seen enough.
Yeah.
Just get out of here. But that's why, that's another reason why I see some indie filmmakers, they're able to make things that look so much more expensive than they actually are, is because, they have a friend who has an uncle who knows a guy who has a cousin who has an old shed that they're like, he's going to knock it down. So if you want to, drive a car through it, hey man, what's the difference, right?
Yeah, listen, it's all about production value and, putting that value on screen. And if you have a person that knows a person, like you said, they can bring the right resources to the table, it makes all the difference. Like DETOUR was not in the bank, it was $40,000. It wasn't that much money, but one of my producers knew the owner of the picture car warehouse, and they do, all the picture cars in town, from like the Little Miss Sunshine van, the 18 van, and everything. And they're like, "Well, what kind of car you need?" "Well, how about a late 90s Jeep Cherokee?" I'm like, "Okay, all right, here you go." And they cut it up for us, had a guy on set flying off the walls. And that was worth a lot. And we just, gave him a couple of points on the back end. I really am a big proponent of getting the train moving, right? Once the train is moving, people see that you're serious and you're making a movie. People are going to want to come on board, right? I mean, when things are happening, they want to be a part of something happening. And it's kind of a special, it's like catching lightning in a bottle, but it's kind of what you have to look out for.
Yeah, very true. And also I noticed people like to back a winner. And I know that sounds kind of obvious, but what I mean by that is they want to see, like, it's kind of funny. Like some of the other filmmakers I had on here, some people didn't want to help them at all.
Yeah.
So, okay, fine. You don't want to help us. We'll just, don't let that deter us. We're going to keep moving on,
Sure.
Well, until they get to about 90% done or 95 or 99% done, then the same people are like, "Hey, do you need any more help?" You're like, "Well, I didn't need your help now, but I'm glad you want to back me now. But, we're almost there at the goal, and we don't need this stuff anymore."
Yeah.
But honestly, William, that's one of the things I found as well in filmmaking is the best quality a producer can possess is a deep resource list, a deep contact list. You know what I mean? Like able to facilitate things, because producers like that are absolutely worth their weight in gold.
100%.
So you made DETOUR and you were able to release that and you were able to sell it to the guy in the room.
Yep.
So what did you do next? Were you eager to follow it up with the next project, or did you sort of want to take time off? Or
well, the DETOUR experience took a total of 5 years. So as I was making that, as you can imagine, this is my first feature, and I really wanted to make something else. And who knows, in that 5-year process, I had plenty of dark nights of the soul where I was like, is this movie ever going to get out there and get released? We're going to finish it? So while I was doing that, a few friends of mine got together and we made a movie called The Mirror, which was, even less expensive than DETOUR, with primarily involving a friend of mine, an actor friend of mine named Taylor McCluskey, who became a live streamer for this, because I got obsessed with the idea of people live streaming their personas online, and he kind of went method with it and became this person that streamed himself all the time. And we made a mockumentary out of it, which was great. I love it. It's it's out there. It's very meta. I wouldn't say it's a specific genre or anything. And but it went into festivals, and we went ahead and self-released it through Vimeo on Demand and iTunes and Google Play and Amazon. We just skipped the whole Hollywood distribution process with that one.
The reason I asked if you took some time off was I imagine, like you were saying with DETOUR, it took 5 years.
Yes.
And some people just obviously they just get burned out.
Oh, yeah.
I feel it too. Like, I've gotten burned out. I had a project, when you were talking about DETOUR, I had a project where we had money, then we lost it. We had money, we lost it. And we had a national brand actually wanted to buy in the show.
Wow.
And I literally missed it by a fraction of a hair. I literally almost had them give us the keys of the castle. They were gonna fund it completely, give us a location, buy our insurance, give us money to make like Blu-rays and DVDs and marketing materials, and it all just splintered away all in one slum one day. But so that's why I was wondering, after DETOUR, if you're like, what, guys, I love movie making, but I'm just going to sort of take some time off right now before we get into the next thing.
Well, I did get married during that process, and we took a little bit of a honeymoon. So I guess that was a little bit of a break. And, and I couldn't keep working anyway because my wife would have killed me, of course. But so we did have a little bit of a break. But for me, it's a cutthroat business, and you're only as relevant as your last thing. So you just got to keep moving. You got to keep going. Yes, it's exhausting, and it can be very, very stressful at times. But the joy for me is the process of working, writing the script, casting the actors, shooting the film, editing. And if I'm in that zone, I am happy as a clam.
I always find that writing the script is one of the most rewarding experiences, even though you're doing that by yourself in a room, at least most of the time you are, right? So,
yeah.
When you're writing that script, and I sort of, because at least there you can sort of piece everything together one by one, and you sort of have, at that point, you can, there's nothing too crazy you can put in the script, because after all, you're in this creative mindset. It's not until later on where you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? I can't blow up 10 cars and do all this other stuff. So now, you're putting on the producer's hat and you're taking that out. But I think when you're writing the script, it's sort of, as long as you are able to create, and one thing I've learned over the years too is you can't wait for inspiration. You have to just hit the ground running.
Yep.
And just let it come as it does. And some days it doesn't come. Some days you're writing literally, whatever. And you hate it. You hate it the whole time. But at least, what was that old saying? It's better to write something bad than write nothing at all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think, and, I talk to people all the time about, well, I'm having trouble finishing the script, or I haven't started writing yet, or they foresee a long, arduous process. And of course it is to a certain extent. But if you think about it, sit down at your computer, take an hour every morning and write 5 pages. In 3 weeks, you'll have a full feature. You'll have a feature script. You just have to do it. Just don't forget about the blank page. Just start writing. If it sucks, writing is rewriting. You're going to go back anyway. Any decent script should be written probably about 30 or 40 times. But the hardest part is just getting the words on the page, and you kind of just have to buck up and do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the former podcast guests I had on was Scott Mayers, and Scott Mayers is absolutely phenomenal of a screenwriting coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually written screenplays too. He wrote K9. I forget what the other one he wrote, but he actually does this thing called 0 Draft 30, where he actually has it's a month-long journey to making a script, and he literally will say, okay, guys, we're going to start on the 1st of whatever, and we're going to end at the last day of the month, the 30th or whatever. And by then we should have a full first draft. It's probably going to be bad. Well, it is going to be bad, but at least it's something, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I also, I have a writing partner, and that helps me a lot. I know people don't write with anybody, and that's fine. For me, it helps in the process because there's really no such thing as writer's block. Like if for some reason I can't think of something, we play tennis with it. I pass the ball to him and he takes it for a while, pass it back, etc. And I feel like we're doubly we're literally doubly productive, right? We have 2 times the scripts that I would have writing by myself.
Yeah, that's very true. And I wanted to ask, William, do you subscribe to any particular screenwriting methodology? Like, like Sid Field has his own style of writing. There's a sequencing method from USC. Do you subscribe to any of these methods, or do you just sort of write?
Well, I think you absolutely need to be cognizant of it. You have to learn the rules before you can even think about breaking them, right? So you need to learn 3-act structure. You need to know, when the beats are hitting, when they're not, and learn to understand and become aware of what's dramatic and what's not dramatic. And once you figure all that stuff out and have a good basis, a good understanding of screenwriting, then you can kind of mess around with it. I mean, I like what Stephen King says, right? His whole approach, or I'm sure this is a big simplification of it, is introduce your characters, get your readers and audience to connect to them, and then let the monsters loose, right? I mean, that's kind of the deal. And we didn't do that with DETOUR, because DETOUR, we got some notes initially like, oh, we should have set him up and see him going to his meeting before he gets hit by the mudslide, so we connect to him. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just start off with his first person disorientation of waking up underground in this disaster, and then sort of learn about his life. But since I was aware of the rules, the beats that would have been in that first act in a conventional screenplay, we hit them later. You just got to know what you're dealing with. You got to learn the tools, and then you can mess around.
Yeah, very well put. A lot of people on the podcast, they all have their own different way of writing. So it's sort of like some people love Save the Cat.
I love it. It's a great book. It's terrific.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, some people actually, and they have all of the follow-up, and they have all the things by Blake Snyder, and other people on here, and they say, this is how I write, and it's completely different. But I sort of look at what the common themes are that tie them all together.
Yeah.
And if you know what I mean, like what are all the main beats these things are all hitting? Like what has to happen? And it's all the same in the end, really, right? Because you have to have a beginning, middle, and end.
Yep.
We have some kind of protagonist, some kind of antagonist. There's a midpoint. There has to be something that takes us from Act 1 to Act 2, Act 2 to Act 3, and Sid Field calls that the turning point.
Yeah.
And it's just, and you sort of see a lot of these beats. I definitely think that, if you're, for the people listening, if you were to even just go to a Borders doesn't exist anymore. If you go to Barnes and Noble, but and just look at some of the screenwriting books, and I don't think I think they do help, especially beginner screenwriters more than anything, because I think they can sort of put a map of how to get there. So what I mean by that, William, is like, if you were to go to the store and you have a point A to point B, but you've never been there before, you sort of need directions, right? But then when you've been there, you can sort of go there without using a map, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, all those rules and rubrics, they become subconscious after a while. So they're there with you, guiding you, but they don't serve as limitations. Like, oh, am I doing this right? Or I'm not hitting this beat. You start to feel it at a gut level. And I think ultimately that's where you want to get to as a screenwriter, because then at that point you can kind of let your imagination run wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you could sort of become like a David Lynchian type writer,
yeah,
and sort of have these incredible surrealist, esoteric screenplays that are just complete mind fucks, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. And funny enough, yeah, Lynch is my favorite director. Funny enough, love him.
See, I actually have his book right next to me. I know you can't see it, but it's Catching the Bigger Fish, and I actually got to see Lynch when he came here to Philadelphia. When I was going to buy tickets for it, I actually hovered over and I was like, let me buy another ticket in case somebody wants to come with me. I bought the ticket, and literally less than a minute later, they were all sold out. It literally sold out in like I think it was like 2 minutes at most. And I was like, Jesus, God, good thing I actually got in here, because I actually had a private email like, oh, buy tickets before they go on sale to the general public. I was like, my God. But he was amazing. The whole speech was absolutely amazing. And he is, one of those, writer directors and filmmakers who just sort of, I think a lot of people are inspired by him, and some people they're very obvious of it, and some people are just maybe they don't pick up on some of the things the first time, and maybe they don't realize, all the things going on in his movies. Because, his movies, there's like 10 things going on.
Oh yeah, there's lots of layers to the onion.
Exactly. Especially like Mulholland Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that the first time I saw that, I was like, wow, I know that this is a good movie. I didn't understand it, but I know it was good.
Yeah, those are the best kind of movies that just hit you emotionally. You don't necessarily understand them intellectually, but it just hits you. And that's an artist that knows what they're doing.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And, speaking of artists and what they're doing, I wanted to get back to your career because, after The Mirror, you made Don't Look Back.
Correct.
So, how long after The Mirror did you decide to make Don't Look Back?
Well, The Mirror came out shortly after DETOUR because I was working on that simultaneously. And then once DETOUR was released, for what it was, it did well. It got a theatrical release, that went simultaneous on demand, and it kind of became this little cult movie. And I got a lot of great meetings, and one particular company thought of me for a project that they were developing in-house, which was a contained thriller. And they thought that I can bring, what I did with DETOUR to this film. And after a number of months of them working on the script with their writers, they ended up hiring me. So that was my first hired gun gig, which was different than DETOUR and The Mirror, because I was very much involved from the ground up with those movies, right? But for this one, the project was in place, the funding was already in place, and I was hired, and I was working for executive producers. It's basically a studio film, so it was kind of a different world, which was both good and bad. I mean, it was great because I had a lot of room to play and had better resources, but we only had like 3 or 4 weeks to pre-produce this thing. 3 weeks I was directing a film. It happened that quick, and it was only a 14-day shoot. DETOUR, One Man in a Car, was 23 days. This was a much bigger cast, bigger scope, and it was a 14-day shoot, which is incredible.
So when you were hired as there's this gun for hire, did you did they have anything in place at that point? Did they have like a storyboard? Was that done? Or was there anything, or did you sort of have to like pull everything together last minute?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that was there creatively was the script, which I ended up having a pass on. I did a rewrite. My writing partner rewrote it for 2 weeks, and then the next 3 weeks, I did my directing thing, which is I beat out everything. I storyboard, all my shots. I worked very closely with the cinematographer. I got to hire all my creative heads. And I have I gave this 3-hour director's presentation to the executive producers, kind of showing them my vision, and they were on board. Yeah, I mean, there wasn't any kind of dictation about certain shots I needed to get or, story beats I needed to hammer home. I just made sure that I was on the same page with what, everyone wanted to do with the story. And, it let me loose on set.
That's absolutely, amazing that you were able to pull that together. Because, I found myself in a similar position, and literally I was like, wow, I have a lot more to do than I thought I did.
Yeah.
I was like really quickly I had to get a new director of cinematography.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And then after we shot this whole thing, you couldn't have made a more similar project if you tried. Literally, it was the exact same idea. And the producers were like, well, we don't know what we're going to do with it. And it never got released. So it's on someone's hard drive somewhere, but the other project literally came out of nowhere, and it was like the exact same idea after we got this done. Yeah, it was absolutely heartbreaking. But it was a learning experience, and we sort of use everything as a learning experience, both the good and the bad, and we move on and we try to make the next thing better. So you wrote a book that actually caught my eye, which is DETOUR Hollywood. Yeah. And, could you, just talk a little bit about that? What was the impetus to write this book?
Well, there's a very specific moment that led me to write it. I was in the editing room on DETOUR, and I invited one of my film school mentors, a teacher by the name of Don Camburn, who very well-known editor. He edited Easy Rider, The Last Picture Show, and Romancing the Stone. So he's been around for a while in the business, and I showed him a cut for his notes. And, he gave me his notes, and then we just started talking about the process. And I started to tell him about all these crazy stories that, of what was going on and behind the scenes of getting DETOUR made. And he's like, Will, I hope you've been writing this down. I was like, well, not really. Should I? He's like, yeah, let's make a great book. So from that point on, I started writing it, and it took about 4 or 5 years to come up with a draft. And during that time, I started to teach directing, and naturally, I taught. I teach from experience, and a lot of the stories that, experiences I went through were informing other people. And I thought, hey, you know what? Through my successes and mistakes of making my first feature, I thought I had a lot to say. And the industry is changing a lot, right? There weren't this many micro budget films being made 5 to 10 years ago, right? The independent film world was thriving. Right now, the independent film world is disappearing, at least the one that we're familiar with, right? So things have evolved, and I felt like, oh, you know what? I kind of have my hand, after making DETOUR, I have my hand on the pulse of things. So, why not write a book about it?
So, when you actually wrote this book, were you using anything for inspiration, like, maybe Robert Rodriguez's Rebel Without a Crew, or, even some of some of the other film books out there? Were you using anything else to sort of use as like a guide of something you wanted to improve on, or if you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I've read a lot of those books. I didn't use anything as a model for this. If anything I use as a model is probably more Save the Cat. I know it's screenwriting, but just the way it was formatted and the way it disseminates information is very user friendly and practical. And I kind of wanted to capture that feel in the writing. Because I felt like I had a lot to say about my method of directing, which is, which is nothing new, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's been said before, but, in terms of making a micro budget film, the way the skills that I've learned and how I use them in a micro budget medium was new, right? So I wanted to really get that down, and then in addition to that, really, write a detailed journal of sorts of making DETOUR, right? Because there are a lot of lessons I learned that I thought could help aspiring filmmakers who want to do what I did.
So do you feel that one of the biggest mistakes that people trying to set out to make their own film make is sort of they don't know where it's going to go? Meaning, like, if I got my friends together to make a film and I said, you know what, guys, my plan for this is it's going to go to Sundance and we're going to sink all this money into it. Let's just say it's, $20,000 or whatever. And that's sort of like the gamble. Yeah. Do you feel that's like some of the biggest mistakes you see, instead of them saying like, okay, look, we're going to make this film for $10,000. It's going to go on YouTube for this reason or these reasons, and we're going to parlay that into something else. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think I rarely think about where it's going to go. I mean, and that would make me a terrible producer. But, for me, the most important thing is making the movie. And if you could just funnel all that passion and focus all that, energy into making the best film possible, you'll find an audience, right? And right now, the idea of finding an audience and just the plethora of distribution avenues that there are out there, it's changing every day exponentially. So I wouldn't spend too much time really banking on certain things like, oh, we got to get this into Sundance. Oh, we're going to, just release this here. I mean, it's good to think about, particularly if you're a producer, but as a writer and director, I would say focus on the creative material, because that's where, that's the best place to put all your time and energy.
A really quick story about what we're talking about here is I had a friend of mine. He actually shot a movie. He didn't shoot the whole movie. He actually shot the part of a sizzle reel. Yeah. And obviously back then it wasn't called a sizzle reel; it was called something else. And this is when like YouTube was first becoming big. I think so. This is like 2005 or 2006. Uh-huh. And he shot part of this, and it was a zombie movie. And he got wrote up in his local paper and this and that. Well, all of a sudden, he gets a message that, somebody wants to come buy his film. And he was like, what the hell is this? Is this a joke?
Yeah.
And it turns out it wasn't a joke. I don't know if I should say who it was, but it was a certain production company that we've all heard of.
Yeah.
And they offered to come in and buy it. And William, I'm telling you, it was almost like he was double dog daring himself to screw this up. And he literally, everything you shouldn't do or say, he did and said. And then he got nothing. And he literally was like, I don't understand what went so wrong. It's like, well,
that's tough.
They offered him, I think, $50,000 for the script, and he would get an associate producer credit in the final movie.
Yeah.
He said no, and they offered him $100,000, a chance to pitch another project, and the associate producer's credit. And that's when he said, no way, blah, blah, blah. I have to direct this thing. And they were like, okay, well, we don't need your script anymore. So.
Wow. And he didn't make the movie, I take it?
No, he did not. He was, I think that whole experience burned him out.
Yeah.
And like literally, William, he couldn't, he shot a partial of the movie. And I think deep down in the recesses of his brain, I think that whole thing about that deal was constantly going in his brain, like, oh my God, what did I just do? Why, could I hit the reset button on this?
Yeah.
And so, we were just saying, the movie never did come out. It's like a partial cut somewhere on someone's hard drive. But that was just from putting like a partial thing on YouTube, though. All of this, it was just somewhere out of the blue. And I think he just did it just to sort of say, hey, everyone, look at this zombie makeup that we had somebody do. And it led to that. It was almost unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, that stuff happens. And that's an interesting situation because, I don't know what I would do, but I don't know what the budget was for the feature, but if it's a zombie movie and you're dealing with a lot of special effects and makeup, it can get quite costly. So when you want to make your first feature, you have to be very careful about budget, right? And what you want to walk away from. Because if the movie's going to cost $10 million, and someone comes in for, or a reputable production company says, hey, I want to make this movie, but you're just going to be the screenwriter on it. We're going to hire someone more experienced to direct it. You might want to think seriously about that. However, if it's like a DETOUR level or something you're confident you can make, then you might want to walk away because how important is that story to you, and how important is it for you to make that first feature as a director, right? It's a question you have to ask. I don't know whether he made the right or wrong decision.
I think looking back on it now, I think he made the wrong decision. Yeah. And I think he has admitted that too. I actually haven't talked to him in a long while, but I don't even know if he does film anymore. But again, like I was just trying to say, the point of what I was trying to make was when he was going to put it up somewhere, he didn't know what he was going to do, and then all of a sudden, afterwards, after this whole deal fell through, he was like, maybe I should just put it on YouTube again and see if I could just sort of, sell copies.
Yeah.
Then, and this was like 2005, 2006. So that was before YouTube. Now, obviously, you can donate to somebody on YouTube. You can do all sorts of stuff on YouTube. They made it a lot easier. But, that I sort of find that, like when Jason Brubaker comes on the podcast, that's one of the things we always talk about is some people take a gamble, like, oh, we're going to get this into Sundance, and that's how we're going to bankroll this. Yes. We're going to tell everyone we're going to get into Sundance, and that is such a gamble. That is, the odds of that happening are so slim.
Very low. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so obviously, the way we've actually met William, I was about to call you Jason again. The way we met William was, we actually met because you actually wrote an article, how can middle-class filmmakers make a living on IndieWire?
Yes.
And that actually caught my eye, and I actually, tweeted that out. So if you could you just, go into that a little bit about that article you wrote?
Yeah, I wrote that article and kind of caught fire, and since then I've been writing a lot about this this problem, right? And the problem is it's simple yet complex. The studios have all dissolved their independent arms, and they're spending more and more money making, bigger and bigger movies, stuff that's, called tent poles, 150, 200, $250 million movies. And they're just betting it all on them. So what's been happening is that there's been this, void of money going toward smaller character, films, niche films that used to be made within the $5 and $20 million range, which were quite common 10 or 15 years ago, even, 5 years ago. So what's been happening in the indie world is what was independent film, that middle class space of filmmaking, has gone to micro budgets. So now it's completely polarized. They're just mega budget movies and micro budget movies. And micro budget is really defined by a movie that's made for under $1 million. However, usually they're made for a lot less than that, 100, 200, grand. And there are double the amount of those movies coming out. So you have film students, filmmakers who can get their hands on pretty good equipment now and make a pretty good looking film for not much money. Who knows if the story is any good, but the movies are getting made, and there's a huge saturation in that part of the business. So how do you get those films out there and get noticed? The studios, basically what they've been doing is they can pick up these films. These films get into festivals. They'll come in at the last moment and pluck it out and give you a shitty deal. And then you have your movie out there, but you're not necessarily making a living, because you can make your micro budget film, but with a micro budget film comes a micro budget salary.
Yeah, that is very true, because, and also in the micro budget film, you have to worry about sort of every little dime, every little penny, every little nickel has to be accounted for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everything has to be sort of done on the cheap. And I've done micro budget films too, and what I do is I usually go down to the Goodwill or find stuff on eBay or Craigslist or whatever, and just stuff that I can just smash and afterwards just throw away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So look with your car. I mean, that was a great example with DETOUR. Like that car, you just found that beater off of Craigslist, and then and was able to destroy it.
Well, that was what we were going to do, but we had the Picture Car Warehouse bring in their car for us, but that was a big favor. But we wouldn't have gotten that favor if we didn't, get the train moving and just start shooting the thing. But we started shooting before we even had a place to. We didn't have a car. We didn't have a place to shoot it. We shot all the flashback stuff first, and then once we started shooting, I invited some producers who were interested in the project to set and showed them dailies. And one of the sets of producers, signed on, and they brought these resources to the table. But still, it was no money. People were just doing us favors.
Yeah. It's sort of calling a lot of favors. I've been there as well, just calling, sort of like seeing what you can do as sort of like a team. And, maybe like down the line, you help them out, they help you out.
Exactly.
William, one of the things that, I've always been told about networking is always try to offer somebody some value. So, always try to, when you're going to approach somebody that you want to meet, try to offer them some kind of value so that they later on, if they're in a position to help you, they might reciprocate that, if you know what I mean.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what this business is about. I mean, you want to help as many people as possible, and then hopefully they'll, return that help when you need it.
And that sort of brings me into, my next talking point, which is your IndieGoGo campaign.
Yes.
For No Alternative, which is, a feature film. You've just actually launched a crowdfunding campaign. So if you could you take us through No Alternative crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. We just launched yesterday, and it's my first crowdfunding campaign. I've kind of been going back and forth on whether or not I should do one, and it's become more and more clear that to make a character-driven movie that you're really passionate about, you need help. You need investors, or if you can't get investors, you need people to contribute. It's a story that's been with me a very long time. It's based on a novel I wrote in 2012, and it's about teenagers in the early 90s, and this specifically this brother and sister. The brother Thomas this is right after the suicide of Kurt Cobain, so his suicide looms heavy. Everyone wants to be the next Nirvana. If you're in a garage band, you do. And Thomas Harrison and his band, they want to become this next big thing, and they become so obsessed with it that it blinds Thomas to what's either the mental collapse or the eruption of musical genius of his little sister Bridget. And Bridget decides to just reject this whole alternative craze and her brother's music, and decides to become a gangster rapper named Bree B. So. I think it's a very timely movie. There really hasn't been too much material that has gone back to the early 90s. And I feel like there's going to be this deluge of of movies, of TV shows, of books. And people are getting really nostalgic about that time, because I really think there hasn't been really that important a moment in pop cultural history since, right? So I'm looking to go back, and it's a micro budget movie. I have half the funding from an investor who is extremely passionate about the project, but it's contingent on me raising the rest. So that's what this crowdfunding's for.
So, so it's sort of like, you have a double incentive now to have this succeed, because not only would you get the crowdfunding funds, but you could also have the other half from this producer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I don't want to lose that other half, Dave.
So, well, it's funny because, I've actually heard of this, of stuff like this before, because I've had other filmmakers on who said, we had a producer come on. He wants to see, basically a proof of concept,
yes,
and launch it on Kickstarter, launch on IndieGoGo, launch on GoFundMe. And if we can find that this idea is popular enough and people are willing to fund it, then, we'll kick in the other half.
Yeah.
And I sort of think, that's what the original idea of crowdfunding, when this all started, was the idea of you weren't supposed to get all your funds through crowdfunding. It was only supposed to be like a supplement, like, 10, 20, 30% of it. I think that's why when I see some of these projects that, I get emailed projects literally like every other day, every day. And it's literally like, hey, Dave, we're going to try to raise $1 million for my student film. What the hell are you thinking about? Like $1 million? Come on, man.
Yeah, you have to be realistic.
Yeah, exactly. It's just why when I see this stuff, I'm like, what? Oh, come on. So, could you, so when you were making your crowdfunding campaign, did you actually come up with like all the perks and the tiers, or did you have some help with that as well?
Yeah, well, my wife helped a lot, because she's really good at that kind of stuff. And the perks are pretty cool. You have the digital downloads, you have the t-shirts and stuff, but we're also offering props from both DETOUR and Don't Look Back, and filmmaking mentorships. Like I said, I've been teaching a lot, so I can give notes on screenplays. I can talk about filmmaking, teach point of view, subtext, go through the whole, to give my experience to others, outside of just the book. So I think in my research of other crowdfunding campaigns, you see like these, a variety of different things. Like you have you pay for this perk and you actually get something physical, or it's more experiential, like you get to come on set or have a character named after you, or be an extra, which are all perks we have, or it's direct interaction with the filmmakers, right? So I tried to cover all of that.
I think that's what a lot of people actually look for, is that they want to make sure the filmmakers are actually vested in this project as well.
Yeah.
Because you hear horror stories about somebody just threw up a crowdfunding campaign, they miraculously get funded, which actually sometimes happens, and then they either they disappear, or something happens, or what I mean. It's always, that's why I like having filmmakers on like you, William, who they're vested in the project. This is a project they want to do. It's, what I mean? It's something they actually feel, and they also, put the perks in there where, hey, you can come talk to us. We're here. This is our project. And, we're not going to, we're not going to just disappear over the night. If you know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, filmmaking in essence is a collaborative process, right? And why not extend that collaboration to the audience and contributors and supporters? I mean, I think it's great if people are investing in you and your film, and if they're literally a part of that process, everybody wins, right? It's an experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And speaking of a collaborative experience, I actually saw on your crowdfunding page, your landing page, you actually have From the Heart Productions.
Yes.
As fiscally sponsored by. I actually have been trying to get Carol Dean on the podcast.
Oh, funny. Yeah, she's terrific. I just spoke to her the other day.
I was a finalist for one of her sponsorships, and I actually had a project, and it was me, and all the other projects were like these very serious documentaries, and I had some very weird project about Lloyd Kaufman, the guy who heads Trauma.
Yeah, Trauma. Sure.
And I said, geez. I'm like, these people are, out to tell a story about, people who don't have like clean wood or anything, and I'm like, I just want to make some fart jokes with Lloyd Kaufman.
That's very funny.
But no, but it's great though that you were able to get from the Heart Productions on board.
Well,
they're a wonderful organization.
They're a terrific organization. They took to the project because it's also there's a it's a socially conscious film because part of my whole rationale and mission here is to destigmatize mental illness and drug addiction and suicide, which are all themes that hit very close to home because my sister was mentally ill. She had borderline personality disorder, and the character Bree to Be is based on her. Right, I can only take minor credit for that, the brilliance of that character, because she brought that to life. And one of the ways she was able to cope with her mental illness was to literally take a different persona, and she became this like hardcore gangster rapper. And last year, she tragically died of a drug overdose. So I feel like there's nothing that's going to stop me from making this movie. It's an important story, not only to kind of bring my sister back to life in a sense, but hopefully, help other people like her who are suffering to know that, hey, it's okay to talk about mental illness. Let's not keep it in. Let's get it out there and get support for you. There are people that care and want to help.
Yeah, very well put. William, I think there's still a stigma to mental health, like you said.
Absolutely.
And, that's why some people don't want to reach out for help, because they sort of feel that they'll be judged on that. And, and that's why I'm glad, there's films like this, like yours coming out there that sort of show this, and you're telling a story and you're sending a message at this, at the same time. And, and you're doing it, in a very creative way. So, obviously everyone listening, the show notes, I'm going to link to, William's IndieGoGo campaign, No Alternative, a feature film. So all you have to do is click on that and you can go right to the landing page and, check it out. Cause William and I were saying, he has some really cool perks on here, of all tiers. I mean, and by the way, you have some really nice, artwork on here too, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. That took me a long time to do in Photoshop. I think it's well worth it.
Yeah, that's another thing, and William, like other people who have said before, they always underestimate how much time it would take to do certain things. Like that's what I did when I was crowdfunding. I thought, I was like, you know what? I'll put this up. I'll make this page. It'll take what? 4 hours.
Yeah.
Literally, I was up there for weeks, like trying to design things in Photoshop. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, what was I thinking? And that's not even the campaign. That's just getting the landing page ready. Like when that campaign hit, I was like living and breathing it. And I was like, tweeting producers. I'm like, can you please help tweet this out? Can we please do this? Please do that. And honestly, crowdfunding with a team, it's not even a comparison. If you try to crowdfund yourself, forget about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long process, but you know what? I mean, I feel like with anything, like with movies or even with the crowdfunding campaign, the more passion and time and effort you put into it, it'll reflect well on you and people will respond better to it.
Yes, absolutely. Like it's sort of like I was saying earlier about people want to back a winner. They love to see that you're putting all this effort forward. That attracts a certain type of people, certain type of person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, when you start doing more and you start doing this, it starts to attract more people. And then by the end, like I was saying, when you're about to cross that finish line, you'll get all those friends and naysayers like, hey, we always believed in you, man. We were always there for you.
Yeah. I'm warning all my friends and Facebook friends right now. You're going to be hearing a lot from me in the next month or two. Better or worse.
Well, and you know what? That's what you have to do. Is because when other filmmakers do that too, they always say that they send out that tweet. Sorry, I'm about to kill your timeline. I'm about to do a tweet-a-thon. Sorry to all my Facebook, followers, friends. I'm about to blow up your timelines with this project. And again, William, I know you probably have a great team behind this. And like I was going to say, because I know having that team is integral for success. Because I mean, it just, there's too many times, in filmmaking nowadays where people try to be like a one-man army.
Yeah.
But when you have a whole team behind you, it's like taking so much of the stress away, because now, okay, I have one person on Twitter, one person on Facebook, stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes some of the pressure off, and you need support, right? I mean, making a movie is a very difficult thing. And it's like I said earlier in the conversation, it's kind of like controlling chaos. So the more people that are on your side willing to help out, the better, right? You need it.
Yeah, absolutely. You need as many supporters as you possibly can, and then like I joke around about, but you should push those naysayers away. Like if you ever have people in your life at all who are like, I don't know if I want to donate to that, whatever, just get them the hell out. Like I launched a crowdfunding campaign one time. I had friends that I knew for years, and they were like, what the hell is this? Blah, blah, blah. You're online panhandling. I'm like, get the hell out of here, dude. I delete you off. And then they see you at a party later on. And William, my life is kind of like Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like I don't mind an awkward situation. So like they see me and they don't know whether to say hi. and I'm like, well, you badmouth the crowdfunding campaign. So
yeah, well, our filmmaking. Hey, people, even when I wrote some of these middle class articles, I got some responses, about, well, there are a lot of worse things in life to write about. Yeah, I'm sure there are, but hey, when do you own a TV? Do you watch it? Do you go to movies? Yes. Well, then there's an importance to it that's already a part of your life, whether you know it or not. And art in anyone's life. For me, I mean, it's a big deal, and it should be supported. And independent film, recently has been really getting this shaft.
Yeah, and I always wonder, with all this talk about Netflix and Amazon and their spending habits now going just every year, they're spending more and more. I wonder when they're going to start launching an indie film section.
Yeah,
where it's just like, hey, this is a horror movie that was shot for $5,000. Hey, this is a comedy, road trip comedy that was shot for $20,000.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I actually applied for a job at Netflix, and that was one of my pitches for an idea, was actually just to make a special corner of acquisitions for them, where they were literally, you could just, if you were a filmmaker and you had your movie all ready to go,
yeah,
you could just submit it here, and then if Netflix took it, they would just put it on this special
great idea.
List.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So they didn't go for it?
No, they didn't. And they told me never to call them again. So.
Well, they lost out.
I tried to pitch them a couple of pitches too, and for the 100th episode of this podcast, I actually talked about that too. I actually about some of the other ideas I had, and I pitched too many ideas to them. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
But I'm sorry, not to get off topic, but yeah. But like I said, I think No Alternative looks great.
Thanks, man.
I actually have to kick in a few bucks. Now that I just thought about it, cool. And again, this, even with the podcast, just creating your network and just sort of building and just sorting to see how you can help out with people. That's what I want to do with this podcast, just to sort of, see, hey, here I am, guys, and maybe I can help you out a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Dave. Thank you.
So, William, in closing, as we're sort of winding down here, I wanted to ask, is there anything we didn't talk about, or is there anything that maybe you wanted to discuss that we weren't able to, and, or maybe just, a thought that you wanted to discuss, sort of to put a period at the end of the sentence, or at the end of this conversation, excuse me. It's been a long day, William.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. We covered a whole career, man. That was pretty good. I mean, I think just for any filmmakers listening, or film students who ask me for advice, I just say, look, I mean, life is short. Pick that right now. Pick the most passionate story that you're aware of inside of you, and find a way to tell it, right? Because that's how you're going to differentiate yourself with your own unique voice and make a mark in the industry. Don't think too much about the business aspect of it. Don't ignore it, but have something to say, and go ahead and say it, and make that movie as though it's the last movie you'll ever make.
That is wonderful advice, William. And William, where can people find you out online?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm at WD Filmmaker. I'm also you can find me on Facebook. William Dickerson Filmmaker is the handle. And on IndieGoGo. Look up No Alternative, the feature film.
Awesome. And everybody, I will link to all those in the show notes, as I always do. And you can find me, DaveBullis.com. Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. William, I want to say thank you very much for coming on the show, and I wish you the best of luck with No Alternative.
Thanks so much, Dave. This was great.
Oh, my pleasure. And, hopefully sometime I'll see you down the road sometime. And if you have another project you want to come back on and talk about, please feel free to let me know.
That'd be terrific. Thanks, man.
Anytime, buddy. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.